Hello everyone, Jason here again. Today we'll be reading chapter 3. The title for chapter 3 is Drug Suppression and Its Effects. It has a quote from Hippocrates, who's the father of medicine. The quote is, "Leave thy drugs in the chemist's pot, if thou canst heal the patient with food." Since every cell in the body is dependent upon the bloodstream for life, it is important that it be free as possible from poisonous substances. If the blood is laden with drugs, every cell of the body will be affected. The drugs eventually will become a part of the tissues, and in time will express themselves in some organ. Some drugs are used to paralyze nerves so that pain is not felt. Some are used as antiseptics, others as diuretics, etc. Drugs are also used for their effects upon effects. Some persons may be fooled into believing that their disease has been cured when they cease to feel pain or develop a fever. But from our viewpoint, pain and fever are our best friends in most cases. Other persons may think their stomach ache has been cured when the abdominal manifestation has only been moved to another locality. When a stomach ache is suppressed by drugs, the cause will be expressed somewhere else in the body. Let's read that again. That's significant. When a stomach ache is suppressed by drugs, or any condition, I would add, the cause will be expressed somewhere else in the body. The important thing to know is that there is no cure in any drug. Cures come when new cells have taken the place of old, and no drug belongs in any cells which are to become part of the new body. Drugs serve only to suppress disease and drive it back into the tissues. The great wrong is that they are used to suppress the simplest eliminative processes through which the body rids itself of waste and which would be forgotten. When these conditions are suppressed, they can develop into chronic disease. There is no case of asthma that originally was not hay fever. Asthmators, medicated cigarettes, injections, etc., that are used to alleviate and suppress the symptoms of hay fever result in chronic asthma. The hay fever was not cured, it was merely changed into asthma. The day will come when those who are responsible for interfering with nature's processes of elimination and thus producing chronic disease will have to answer for it. I believe that the increase in diseases such as cancer, diabetes, arthritis, etc. is due to the suppression of simple children's diseases, simple eliminative processes, and other subacute ailments. This is difficult. This is a difficult thing to say to doctors, and a difficult thing for patients to understand. When doctors have the very soul of the nation in their hands, they should realize that the how to live healthfully process is by far more important than how, in quotes, the how to get rid of the pain process. How true. I've seen that even in my own life. My knowledge of drugs is not based upon any interest in them or study of them. It is based upon having handled their evil effects in patients who have come to me chronically ill. We know from the study of toxicology that every drug poison has a harmful effect upon the body. Who is to say that the patient into whom a drug is injected can tolerate it without harmful future effects? With the exception of a few standard drugs like quinine, mercury, and sulfur, that have withstood the ages, very few drugs are used consistently for the same condition for a very long period of time. It's very true. And I'd also put in that it's more of a, nowadays it's more of a profit generator, in that when a patent on a drug has come to fruition, the drug company no longer has the patent, then the prices fall and all these generic drugs come out. And so for the medical industry, for the pharmaceutical companies to continue to make money, they then develop a new product that's supposed to be better than the old product, and thus they can make money off of that. Now, whether it's better or not, that's another totally other question to be answered. Witness the succession of miracle drugs heralded time after time as the latest cure. If any of these discoveries could cure anything, why need researchers continue their seemingly endless quest for new ones? Iris analysis proves the presence of sulfur settlements in the body. Sulfur, which has long been a universal remedy, is one of the ingredients of salves used to dry up skin eruptions of any kind. When sulfur that has been stored in the tissues finally comes to the surface through nature, cure, eliminative processes, it works out of the body in the forms of boils, pimples, or rashes. Among the specific drugs is quinine, which is administered in cases of malaria. Its users often develop ringing in the ears. Quinine shows up as a greenish tint in the iris, in other words, in the eyes, the iris of the eyes. It takes a severe fever to burn it out of the body, and often during a healing crisis, the patient can taste the quinine he is eliminating. In fact, tests of the catarrhal mucus eliminated in the form of a cold during the healing crisis show quinine mixed with this mucus. It makes no difference how long it has been since the quinine was taken into the body. In cases where bromoquinine was given in the past to suppress fevers or pains and aches in the body, the patient will taste it again at the time of crisis, as well as re-experiencing the particular aches and pains that were associated with the original illness. 5 years after the famous sulfa drugs came into vogue, it was reported by medical doctors that about 16% of the patients given these drugs were suffering from kidney damage that was beyond repair. Who can say what may happen to such patients in the 5 years after that? A medical doctor published an article in California Medicine, January 1949, warning fellow physicians against careless use of these drugs because of their toxic effects. He pointed out that the sulfa products had been known to cause or increase acute anemia and other diseases of the bloodstream. That in some patients they cause severe damage to the genital urinary system, sometimes resulting in death, and that there was occasional damage to skin, eyes, ears, nose, throat, and gastrointestinal tract. One of my patients was a little girl with swelling in her legs due to kidney damage from the administration of sulfa drugs. I cannot say that this girl would have been better off under natural cure handling, but I can state that she would not have been made worse, and that I believe nature's cure should be tried first. The reason I feel the natural methods should be given a chance is that I've seen the worst cases, those considered incurable, restored then to normal. Furthermore, they were enabled to live healthy, happy lives thereafter because they had been taught how. This is in considerable contrast to the patient whose pains are suppressed and is sent on his way to further transgress the laws of health until more serious conditions befall him. I believe that the average person wants to live correctly and will if he is taught how. Some persons are not quite ready to live correctly, but I think we are furthering the crime of living on coffee and donuts, soda pop, and hot dogs by taking away their pains and allowing them to continue a way of life which we know will eventually lead to ulcers of the stomach, rheumatism, arthritis, etc. And I would even go further, cancer and all the health issues we're dealing with nowadays. I mean, I look at my parents who are in their 80s, and it's just normal for them to feel horrible every day. That's just part of their life. And I'm like, wow. I have many friends who they don't understand what it is to be truly healthy and feel good all the time. The business of selling aspirin, alkalizers such as seltzer products, quinine products containing bromides, etc., has been built up upon the ignorance of people who are only cultivating a more diseased state of affairs. You know how true this is. Another example is statin drugs. In fact, at the end of this video, for those who are interested, I gave a Blog Talk Radio on the horrible impact that statin drugs are having on people's health nowadays. It's scary. Continuing. Dr. Eugene Dubois, professor of medicine at Cornell Medical School and president of the Association of American Physicians, stated at one of this organization's annual meetings that in his opinion, a large percentage of the drugs now being used in medicine are worthless, and urged the nation's practitioners to throw overboard the great mass of worthless drugs and scrape off the barnacles of false beliefs. How true. Of all the artificial drug substances, I feel the most harmful are the coal tar products. They are found not only in the medical doctor's kit, but on drugstore shelves in cough syrup, synthetic vitamins, hormone compounds, sleeping pills, and numerous nostrums, not to mention their presence in many foods and even chewing gum for flavoring, coloring, etc. Experiments have shown that coal tar definitely causes cancer. If aspirin, which is a coal tar product, is applied to a raw place on a rabbit's ear, in 6 months a cancer will develop. No doubt, very few persons realize that mineral oil is a coal tar derivative. It is quite widely used as a bowel lubricant and as a salad oil in reducing diets. I can remember that my grandmother used to use mineral oil. Continuing, even medical articles contain the information that mineral oils robs the body of vitamin A and other fat-soluble vitamins. In some states, laws have been passed prohibiting the use of this product in the preparation of such items as potato chips, popcorn, etc. Certain evidence has been presented which indicates a relation between rectal cancer and the taking of mineral oil. There are enough unavoidable sources of coal tar without taking it into our bodies deliberately. For example, it is present in city smog, which means fog and coal tar. The smog which is heaviest with coal tar issues from linoleum, tire and rubber, and crude oil factories. Even oil burners are a source of coal tar. In other smoggy cities, lung cancer has increased 12% in the last 15 years. I feel sure also that some of the synthetic ingredients of cigarettes leave a coal tar residue in the body, irritating lung structures and creating a likely seat for cancer. When I receive advertisements telling how to stop that cough, that's in quotes, how to stop that cough, I realize how unacquainted many people are with the laws of the body. It is not pleasant to have a persistent hacking cough, but those who resort to suppressants do not realize that the cough and cold suppressant, a natural process whereby the body can eliminate congestion and stagnation of waste acids. When we stop these internal activities of elimination, we defeat the repairing and rejuvenation processes. One time, my cousin's baby developed an elimination process in the form of eczema on the head. He asked what I thought should be done, and I advised first a fast, then a more natural formula, etc., so that the child could have a toxin-free body. Instead of heeding this advice, he had listened to a medical doctor who assured him that shots would take care of the condition. They did. They suppressed what the body was trying to eliminate, and the child developed asthma, from which he has been suffering for 15 years. From time to time, I am asked my opinion regarding inoculation against diphtheria, smallpox, and other diseases. It is my opinion that these added poisons only lower resistance and lay the groundwork for development of chronic conditions. I mean, this is huge. I just from the COVID vaccine, all the publications that are coming out about all the negative effects that are happening to people right now is just, it's a crime that mainstream media is not bringing this forward. Continuing. Persons who are living correctly, eating proper foods, getting good air, sunshine, exercise, and having positive, constructive thoughts will not need injections. Let people who do not know how to live right and do not want to learn have the injections. Persons who insist on the coffee and donut type of diet and otherwise break the laws of health are the ones most likely to fall victim to epidemic diseases. They do not have the resistance to offset infectious disease. How many cases of disease against which individuals have themselves inoculated develop after vitality has been lowered by the substances injected? In the following excerpt from an open letter to the President of the United States, Journal of the National Medical Society, March-April 1946, is expressed the opinion of one who was twice a gold medalist in Britain, Walter R. Hadwin, MD, MRCS. These are quotes here. In the case of your soldiers, vast numbers of them never did a stroke for their country, but after they were inoculated, had to go straight to hospitals and stay there until they were put into invalid homes, cast upon the country as wrecks for life, some of them killed outright by it. These men were all healthy when they enlisted. They went out on all the vigor of manhood, full of life and zeal, to fight for their country and their country's honor. And now they are robbed of health, slowly dying with heart disease. I have had a number of these men under my own care. Not one single disease had they suffered from upon the battlefield. I could trace that heart disease to nothing but the vile inoculations with which medical officers had injected them. It had produced affections of the heart, of the brain, of the kidney, of the lungs, and other organs. Inoculation has given disease to thousands upon thousands of our brave men who went out strong and healthy and full of spirit to fight for our country, but were knocked over, not by German shell and shrapnel, but by the poisonous lancet of their own military medical officers under the influence of this degrading superstition, and rendered not only unfit for war, but unfit for peace. It is a terrible scandal to think that a superstition like this should place the whole country at the mercy of a little coterie of medical cranks and faddists who have the health and the very lives of our brave men in their hands. We are out to denounce and abolish the whole of this tremendous system of fraud and superstition. It is sanitation and hygiene that lie at the base of all health. And you are not going to make people healthy by pumping disease into their bodies. The standpoint of the doctor orientated in natural therapeutics is practically opposite to that of doctors whose orientation emphasizes the importance of destroying whatever germ life is associated with the disease. The natural cure doctor stands in no awe or fear of bacteria. To him, the frantic attempts to kill bacteria at all costs seems to be approaching the problem from the wrong direction. He knows that these minute, universal scavengers are everywhere, and he would not shudder at the statements that 30 million bacteria have been counted on the arms and hands of a normal individual during a single injection, and that there are 850 million on an ordinary postage stamp. The natural cure doctor considers it natural for bacteria to be present in neurotic or degenerated tissue because it is their function to be active there. But he knows that they will have no detrimental effect upon healthy tissues. Readers who are not entirely familiar with the arguments against the germ theory should be interested in the following comments of Russell T. Troll, MD, who has been called the greatest medical rebel of the 19th century. He was opposed to all kinds of drugs. In a lecture at the Smithsonian Institute, he said in part, "Drug medication, no matter in what disguise or under what name it is practiced, consists in employing as remedies for diseases those things which produce disease in well persons. Its materia medica is simply a list of drugs, chemicals, dyestuffs, in a word, poisons," and that's in capital letters, poisons. They may be vegetable, animal, or mineral, and may be called apothecary stuff or medicines, but they are nevertheless poisons. They may come to us in the shape of acids, alkalis, salts, oxides, earths, roots, barks, seeds, leaves, flowers, gums, resins, secretions, excretions, etc. All are incompatible with vital functions. All are antagonistic to living matter. All produce disease when brought in contact in any manner with a living domain. All are poisons. Those are in cap letters. You know, I can really relate with this just from my own experience in life that, you know, there's so many cases, but I can just tell you when 35 years ago when I began the healing process, and I remember reading this book, and I changed my diet, took out sugar, all other junk food that I was eating. I put myself on kefir, did colonics, and it was amazing the results. I felt good all the time. In fact, fast friends who saw me when they would come into work, they said, "You're always joyful nowadays. Aren't you ever depressed or sick?" And it was just like, it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't even part of my life. And it's just truly amazing how little we know that we've forgotten. And year over year, decade over decade, we've just gotten used to not feeling good. Just because of our food, having all these underlying issues that are dragging us down and just creating all these illnesses within us. On the contrary, hygienic medication consists in employing as remedial agents for sick persons the same materials and influences which preserve health in well persons. It rejects all poisons. The true system of the healing art, hygienic medication, rejects not only the drugs, medicines, or poisons of the popular system, but also repudiates the philosophy or theories on which their employment is predicated. It is in direct antagonism with the drug system, both in theory and in practice. It does not propose to employ air, light, temperature, water, etc. as substitutes for drugs, or because they are better or safer than drugs. It rejects drugs because they are intrinsically bad, and employs hygienic agencies because they are intrinsically good. I would reject drugs if there were no other remedial agents in the universe, because if I could not do good, I would cease to do evil. The medical profession may prosecute this inquiry another 3,000 years and destroy other hundreds of millions of human race in experiments with drugs and doses, but they will never arrive any nearer to a solution of the problem. They will never be able to give a satisfactory answer to the question, for none exists. With proper breathing of fresh, clean air, which is not a drug, we can purify the circulatory system. With proper foods, which are not drugs, we can remineralize the body. Through the use of proper foods, I have seen infection conquered, sores and ulcers healed, and almost unbelievable improvement in bowel function. I have seen raw milk, for example, accomplish results that pasteurized milk could never do. I have seen cases where a change to constructive thinking eradicated colitis and brought relaxation, inner peace, and calmness. I have practically seen the dead raised by natural methods. For instance, Reverend J.L. once sent a lady to me with a cancer of the left breast. She was 35 years of age, weighed only 65 pounds, was paralyzed, had not eaten anything for 2 months, could not talk. In fact, there was hardly any response at all to her external environment. At the time she was brought to me, her doctor had said she had only about 3 days to live. I spent all night at the bedside of this patient, feeding her a goat whey product, a teaspoonful at a time. The next morning, she was able to take a little broth. Omitting the details of her recovery, the final results were that in 1.5 months, she was able to walk around outdoors. In 2 months, she was driving her car. And by the 3rd month, she had gained 20 pounds. When she returned to the doctor who had said she would live only about 3 days, he stated that she no longer had the cancer, and that he could not understand the miracle which had taken place. And this was no temporary recovery. For 3 years afterward, I received a letter from this patient in Sacramento, proving her state of well-being by saying that she had been out mowing her lawn. Another case was a boy of 11 years who was suffering from asthma and had not slept on his back for 7 years. He had to sit up all night leaning over a pillow in order to breathe. We moved him from Long Beach up to the sanitarium above Altadena. After 1 month's time under natural care, which included warm raw goat milk, this lad was sleeping on his back for the first time in 7 years. You know, it's just amazing. You know, he mentions raw goat milk. I can remember I used to have problems with cow milk. I switched to raw goat milk and no issues. Another patient had been on crutches for 14 years. It took a year to get him off crutches, but it was done without drugs by natural methods. I asked him, if this had all happened in a few minutes, what would you think? His answer was, that would be a miracle, which reminded me of the saying of the sage, that truly we need not look for a miracle, because we are a miracle. Since it is rare for anyone to know what it is to feel really well, we hope this discussion serves to make clear, especially to those who are seeking the correct way, that the effects of drugs are deceiving. We have emphasized that while drugs may relieve pain and distressing symptoms for the moment, The process, which thus suppresses the acute stages of elimination, drives the condition into an inactive state, which can develop into serious chronic disorders later. Since we have enough faith in human nature to believe that most persons will try to live constructively if they know how, we state our wish that experiments could be conducted for the education of the public, which would demonstrate the contrast between suppressing the symptoms of disease by means of drugs on the one hand, and removing the causes of disease and building permanent health on the other. How true this is. I can share a personal experience. I've lived in this area for when I'm going on to my 16th year. When I first moved here, I made some really good friends. One of husband and wife made friends with. They, after I think my first year here, they had one child and then following with a second child. And they really listened to all of the type of health practices that I had incorporated in my life. And she incorporated those not only into her life with her husband, but also in the children. This past week, she called me up and she says, Jason, I keep on forgetting, but I just need to tell you how grateful I am that you came into my life and shared what you shared. Recently, this is her talking, recently, the coach at the school that their older child attends came up to them and said, what are you feeding your child? And he was just going on. No other student just has the vitality and just overall the positive attributes that this child had that was making him be a high performance athlete. And so there are examples out there, and I've been grateful to experience not only in my own self and seeing improvements year over year in my own health and my well-being, but also in the children who are our future. Well, today that ends chapter 3. We'll continue with chapter 4 in the next episode. And as I said before, I'll add to the end of this video, the Blog Talk Radio I gave on statin drugs.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Jason, and today's topic is statin drugs. Recently, I was talking with a friend, and we were both sharing stories of health issues that our mothers were dealing with. And as we were discussing this, he shared with me where his mom began showing symptoms of dizziness and wobbly when she was walking. And this was concerning her, and she was trying to think, what's changed? And what had happened is her doctor she'd had for decades retired. And so her last appointment, she had a new young doctor. And one of the doctor was just, the new young doctor was really surprised. And he even questioned her. It's like, you're only on one pill, one drug? And she goes, yeah, I just take this one pill a day and that's it. And he says, well, we need to take a look at this. And so he's prescribed for her a statin drug to start taking. She did. And so when these symptoms started coming about, she, began thinking, it's like, wow, the only thing I've changed in my life is by, I began taking these statin drugs. And so she went off the drug, and immediately these symptoms went away. So she shared this experience with her relatives, and it turns out that Aunt May, who's in a wheelchair, she was also taking statin drugs. She stopped taking the statin drugs, and lo and behold, guess what? She can walk again. She's no longer confined to a wheelchair. And then there was a cousin, after hearing these stories, the cousin Carol, she is actually a nurse, and she was losing her mobility and was almost to that stage of having to go into a wheelchair. So she goes off the statin drugs, and boom,
all of her health issues go away in regards to mobility. And she actually was, felt embarrassed as being a nurse because she knows of the health issues for certain drugs. So after this, I was like, wow, you know what? My mom was recently put on statin drugs after a mild heart attack. And so I began researching, and several of the victims of statin drugs that I read about, they recommended a book. The book is by Dr. Hannah Yosef and Dr. James Yosef. The title is How Statin Drugs Really Lower Cholesterol and Kill You One Cell at a Time. Now, as I read this, it was just amazing how much they put into this. It just so happens that Dr. James Yosef is a victim of statin drugs. He was taking statin drugs for over 10 years, and he was experiencing the health issues. And so when he had the same experience, he went off of statin drugs. All of these health issues cleared up. So both these doctors really did a well job of researching the dangers of statin drugs. And at a high level, they explain in detail how greed of the drug companies are getting in the way, and how that greed actually smothered the conscience of true science. That's not what I want to focus in on today's conversation, but it's important for us to be aware of. But the main point is that I haven't read the whole book yet, but the main point I'm getting is that statins are derived from fungal toxins, and that these toxins block cell growth and replication. Now, for those of you who know about the life cycle, the cell life cycle within the body, each cell in our body has a life cycle. For instance, our skin cells are recycled every 2 weeks. Our bone cells last about a decade. So our body's constantly going through, old cells dying off, new cells being replicated and taking over. Well, it turns out that the statin drugs that are derived from these fungal toxins block this process. And I'm going, so that's why, and because it infects all your cells. Just think about all the health issues that this can create within a person, and probably why it really hasn't come out in relating all of these health conditions to statins. As I researched it, it seemed like the majority of the health conditions fall into two categories, mainly muscle damage and nerve and brain damage. And specifically what I'm concerned about is the nerve and brain damage, because statins double the risk of dementia. And my mom her dementia lately has gotten worse, which concerns me. And also, just this last week, I was talking to my dad, and my mom fell. And that is unusual. My mom is a short lady. She's very, she's kind of stocky, and she's never had problems with, not being sturdy. So that concerned me. So as I read this, I felt a sense of injustice, and I need to share this quickly with my parents. And I was sharing this. I picked up the phone. I was talking to another friend of the family, and sharing this with them, and they laughed a little bit, and I said, and they shared with me that it's not funny, but she was just like the coincidence here. She said, Jason, I was just helping a friend who's been on statins get off of them because they've been having major muscle cramps lately. And they connected it to the statin drugs she was taking. And I'm going, oh my, in the reading, that is one of the issues of statin drugs is muscle cramps. And that there's so many other conditions, like it doubles the risk of diabetes. And I really remember a few other things that concern me just because of my research. I know for myself, I take coenzyme Q10. Well, statin drugs deplete your body of coenzyme Q10. And actually last night, as I was watching a TV show, the commercial came up, And it was all about, if you take statins, you need to take coenzyme Q10. And it was about this company, supporting the sale of their products. And I was just like, wow, just all of these things happening at the same time. And in previous Blog Talk Radio, I talked about the importance of vitamin K2 and how vitamin K2, if you're deficient in it, that your body just throws calcium anywhere. It doesn't put it in the right place. For instance, your teeth and bones, but it starts putting calcium like in your arteries. So you get hardening of arteries. And so one of the impacts of statin drugs is they inhibit the synthesis of vitamin K2, which is not a good thing to happen. So, this Blog Talk Radio, this is something deep on my heart because it impacts my mom. And people need to know about this and share with their friends and especially their loved ones who are possibly taking statin drugs. Thank you.